All right. Welcome, everyone, to the 18th Annual Tallgrass Film Festival. I want to take a quick moment to thank all of our amazing sponsors and all of you out there who have been joining us, watching the films, watching the Q&As, voting for your audience award winners. All of those things so important. Thank you so much. We couldn't do it without you. If you are enjoying yourself, obviously let everyone know on your social media, your Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff. Tag us at Tallgrass Film and use the hashtag Tallgrass2020. Today, I would like to welcome Dana Silverman from Pregame. Welcome, Dana.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for joining me. Writer, director, producer, a multi-hyphenate on this thing. What made you, and you're wearing so many hats, I always like to start with an origin story. What made you want to make movies and what made you want to tell stories?
So I definitely was wearing multiple hats. It was a lot at times. I've always been interested in movies from like a really young age, just as a form of entertainment. But as I got older, I kind of realized that like making movies, there's so many dimensions to filmmaking. There's sound, there's editing, there's writing, there's directing, there's cinematography. And I just realized that like with all those facets to movie making, you can't really ever get bored. There's so much to think about. There's so much to put together. And that was something that really, really excited me. The more that I've kind of, gotten into the craft of filmmaking, the more that I realized, it's not just about like putting like funny stuff on screen or explosions. It definitely is about like kind of creating all of these pieces and putting them together. So you are telling a story, something that does have a beginning, middle, and end, and something that does have a resonant message for people. So they can not only be invested by the interesting things that happen on screen, but can also have a really genuinely moving experience.
Yeah, that's a wonderfully succinct answer. I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah, it seems like everyone just fell in love with movies as a kid and just decided like, yeah, I think I'm going to do that. And that's exactly where I'm at as well. So then fast forward, what made you want to make Pregame? What was the inspiration for that story? And how did it all come about?
So I had been working at my day job for like literally 50, 60 hours a week. It was like 24/7 news. So it was like all day, every day. And there was a hurricane. Unfortunately, I think it was Hurricane Maria at the time. And because of the devastation that was happening there, my day job needed coverage like 24 hours a day. So I was working a lot and I was saving a lot of money. And I had really wanted to make films for a long time, but it just seemed so kind of out of the way. It just seemed very difficult to do. But after getting some very inadvertent, unexpected, hefty paychecks, and after fulfilling my news obligations, I was like, you know what? I have this time. I'm going to try and do this. I'm just going to try and make this film and see what happens. So I thought of, okay, what is the least expensive thing I can do? And that's generally something with like one location, two people. And what I didn't know was because I had written it outside to take place over the course of like 3 or 4 hours, that caused a lot of like technical issues right off the bat. Like we had to like get all this lighting equipment to make it look like the sun was setting. Even though we were shooting it at like 8 a.m. some days. So that was definitely a real learning lesson for me. But I basically decided I wanted to shoot Pregame to kind of, really fulfill this dream, really see if I could make something from start to finish.
Yeah. So then was this your first go at like a pretty beefy kind of short? I mean, have you made other stuff before this?
Yeah, the only things that I had made beforehand were like 48-hour film festivals, like those kind of projects, but this is really like the first like kind of like real filmmaking project I've done.
That's fantastic. That's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I think
I
it's
appreciate that.
yeah, I think it's really beautifully done. And you touched on something, as so I'll just kind of jump around on what I've got here, but you touched on something that I think that I noticed was a smart move. And then as I unpacked it, I said, oh, this was probably a lot harder than it looked. And that is one location, great idea. Outside, the sun is constantly moving on you. The sun is constantly changing. Luckily, you've got a fast-paced kind of basketball game going on, but there's a lot of dialogue and there's a lot of moments there that you want to pick up and they've got to match. So, I mean, was that more of a challenge than you expected it to be?
So basically I had played sports, and also like I had experience like as a production assistant on films. So kind of with that like limited knowledge, I realized it was going to be a challenge from the beginning, the sort of like basketball choreography and saying the lines. So I had rehearsed with my actors for 6 weeks prior to shooting. So for once a week, we would go to a gym, and I would be like, okay, run through the lines. They would advise me on what sort of basketball choreography they wanted to do, because both of them had experience playing basketball and they were really good.
Yeah.
So they ran through the lines as they were doing their moves. We broke it off into sections in the script, and that was basically how we prepared to kind of do things on the day.
Wow, 6 weeks. That's amazing. Yeah. You never get that much time. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I can say before shooting this film was I had done a lot of research. Like, I really like, hearing about like the research that filmmakers do, like kind of what they do for the rehearsal process before they actually start shooting. And I'm one of those people that I think if I am able to, continue to do this, I think that rehearsal is very important. So that was one of the reasons why I decided to do rehearsal so extensively, because I knew that the more prepared I was, the kind of better and more natural it would look on film.
Yeah, it seems like there's two schools of thought there, which is like rehearsals allow you to work out the kinks, allow the actors to get comfortable with each other and grow those relationships. And that's kind of where the camp that I'm in. And then there's other filmmakers that say, no, we want them coming in fresh and like making decisions, on the day. And it's like that from an actor's point of view is like terrifying, because you just kind of got to throw caution at the wind and say, well, I'm going to try this. And I'm going to try this. So do you think, did the actors, Alex and Malik, did they enjoy that process as far as do you think that really helped them in the long run?
Yeah, I do actually. I think that it gave them peace of mind to know that like someone was steering the ship. You know what I mean? That they weren't just being thrown to the wolves and not knowing what to do, especially because I was very honest with them and I told them that this was my first film. But I really tried hard to facilitate an atmosphere of collaboration. And in terms of what you said, in terms of like being spontaneous, versus kind of that rehearsal process, I'm actually a believer in both. I believe you should rehearse in order to allow like that spontaneity to be able to happen. Just because, so much time goes so quickly on film. But I feel like if you have your ducks in a row, you will be able to have that time to allow for some spontaneity. In basically the last section of the film, when they were doing kind of like that, trying to shoot their final bucket, that dialogue was all improvised. I was like, you know what, just shoot, just go, just make sure that it's very difficult for the other person to get that basket. And that dialogue was all theirs. I had nothing to do with it. So that was a case of preparation, leading for that spontaneous magic to happen.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess if you really set the stage and you allow them to feel comfortable in all the movements and everything, then it allows for these tiny micro, things to happen on the surface and to really sell that performance. I thought that they were both fantastic. I mean, where did you find these guys?
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So I got really, really lucky. It sounds like you're into filmmaking as well. Is that correct? Are you a filmmaker too?
Yeah, kind of more on like the acting side and like special effects, and like I just try to produce and stuff. But I'm a part of a film group here in town. We were actually in the Kansas block. We have a film in the Kansas block. It was that
which one?
It was Kill Estate. With
oh my gosh! Okay,
film.
So that
I'm the
is
guy
definitely
in the creepy rabbit thing, but
that is going on my list for sure. I'm so glad you mentioned it. Okay, oh my goodness, I was so excited for a second.
Sorry, I derailed you there.
That's all right. So you were asking about where I found Alex and Malik, right?
Yes.
So basically, then that so much of filmmaking is luck, right? It's kind of about the cards that like fall into place at the right time. A lot of stuff you can't control. So Alex, I had found just kind of on a casting website, and he came and he had that necessary chip on his shoulder for Daryl. I knew that I kind of needed that edge for Daryl, and he had it instantly. So I saw literally like 4 people for the part. And then once I had found Alex, it was just a matter of casting somebody that looked like his brother, but that could also act and play basketball and looked younger than him. So again, it was one of those challenges that I had written into the script, and I didn't know that I had written those challenges until later. I did not have the resources to cast in like sports centers and youth groups and in schools to be able to find the younger brother who could play Joseph. So if Malik didn't show up, I honestly don't know what I would have done. But thankfully, I'd also found Malik on another casting website. He had actually missed his first audition, and I told him to come back because I desperately needed somebody. And thankfully he did, and he was excellent, and I knew I could work with him. And that was basically how I found the 2 actors.
Oh man, yeah, it starts to become a real narrow window to hit when you go, okay, cool, you got to look like this guy's brother, but you got to play basketball, but you got to be younger. Yeah, I'm sure that was quite a task.
And again, like, it was just strange because it was just one of those things where you think it'll be so simple when you write it, but it's like you just like, oh, like, you know, you don't really know these challenges that you've sort of done until after the fact. So it's just really hindsight is 2020.
Yeah, absolutely. You learn so much from every shoot, and I think that's kind of one of the really fun parts about filmmaking is like taking that knowledge from Pregame into the next one, and then the knowledge from that into the next one, and hopefully, you know, learn so much along the way.
I agree. Thank you.
So how did this all play out? I mean, so obviously these guys are basketball players, so I'm sure even though you're used to playing basketball, it's hard to keep that level of intensity up. You know, how did the shoot go? How were you able to take care of these guys and make sure that they aren't face down in the middle of the court halfway through the day when you got the rest of the day to shoot?
It was actually, and I'm glad you mentioned that. Sometimes I was so focused on the performance that I was not entirely in tune with how much of an effect the basketball playing was having on their bodies, because, you know, certain sections, you know, the things they had to do, you know, it requires a lot. You know, you have to be precise in those movements. You have to make sure you hit your marks, and you have to make sure that you're jumping, running. It really does take a toll on the body. And we were doing like sometimes 5 or 6 takes. However, I had made precautions. I had actually paid for a hotel for both of them to stay in that was very, very near the shoot. So that way, you know, both of them lived pretty far away from location. So that way they didn't have to fight through traffic at the beginning and end of every day. It was a decent hotel. It wasn't like a Motel 6. So they were allowed to like stay very near the location in comfort and rest their bodies up. We had ice on set. And I was fortunate because, you know, Alex and Malik were both in very, very good shape. I made sure they had a ton of water. I would ask them, hey, you know, if you need to stop, if you need to rest, please let me know. You know, I just tried to make sure, just from a common sense and decency perspective, that they had kind of opportunities to rest and be comfortable, because, you know, if you're doing like a sports movie like that, it really is important that, you know, their bodies are taken care of, because, you know, like, I mean, their body is the tool that they use as actors as well. So you kind of have to think about that for the future as well. It's not just about your set, it's about their careers too.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last thing you need is someone falling down and getting hurt because their legs are running out of steam. And yeah, that was the first thing I noticed just looking at it and going, God, this must have been a brutal shoot at times, just because it's so intense and so high intensity. And then there's just a lot of emotion there between brothers. I mean, it resonated to me. I mean, I've got 3 brothers, and you know, I remember playing basketball with them on the basketball court and trash talking and everything. So, but the pacing of this is what I really, really love. And it follows that that basketball game and really kind of just keeps kind of one step further, one step faster. And by the end, it's gripping to see who's going to walk away from it. Did a lot of this come together in the editing room? Were you able, or had you really kind of laid the groundwork ahead of time to tell where this was going?
Well, I want to say thank you so much. I'm so glad that you enjoyed the pacing. That was something that I worked really, really hard on from the beginning. I actually think much of the success of that has to do with the script. So I worked really hard on the script. I actually fell in love with screenwriting before I fell in love with filmmaking in general.
Oh, cool.
So I truly believe that a lot of success of what you see on films starts with the script. So I had worked really hard to kind of ratchet up the stakes and ratchet up the intensity in the writing, in the conflict, and kind of have all of that express itself in kind of the final scenes with their final bucket at the very end. But yes, I do think also the success of the pacing comes down to what we did in the editing. We just really tried to make sure that editing was so tight. I truly believe that editing is the stitching of a film. And if you don't make your edits as tight and as purposeful as possible, the film falls apart. I truly believe that. So we just tried to make sure that we had nothing superfluous in terms of scenes and in terms of edits. Every edit stops and starts at exactly the right moment. And then also Charles Liu, who was the DP, he's an absolute genius. So he was able to follow those actors as they were on the court and get the action in the camera where it needed to be, so you didn't get disoriented, and so your eye was exactly where it needed to be in the film. And I also think that helped you kind of engage in that visceral experience with the two brothers and their conflict at the end as well.
Yeah, it was really crazy. There was just a lot going on and a lot of movement, and I love their back and forth there. And knowing that that's like kind of improvised and everything is even better, because they're just in each other's faces. So then, where to for after pregame? Like what's next? What are you gonna try to tackle next?
So I do have a couple of concepts in mind. It's again one of those things where, like, especially because of COVID, I don't really know like when I'm going to be able to shoot again, but I'm trying to look at, but I'm trying to look at this as a time to write. So I've noticed that on the film festival circuit, there's kind of a need for like family friendly programming. So I've decided that if I could shoot something that would just be something that like families can enjoy, kids and their parents, and come to this festival and see their movie, that would be pretty cool. So that's kind of what I'm working on in terms of ideas.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's not often that you see like super family friendly content. I'd love to be able to offer like a family shorts block or something along those lines.
Yeah, because like it's not just people who are into movies. Like a festival isn't just meant for like a moviegoer. It's meant for everybody. It's meant to like bring like culture and togetherness into a community, you know what I mean? So like if you can make like films that are for like a wide group of people, not just for like cinema goers, but for people who just want to have a good time, like more power to you. That's what I think film should be about, is connection and community, for sure.
Yeah, that's 100% what we're all about. Is to the point of where we didn't even know if we were going to do virtual this year, because we were worried about, kind of the loss of those two main things, which is coming together over the love of cinema and creating community around it. And ultimately what we found is we've had to pivot, but we've been able to have connections with people all over the world, and whether it be like a Discord server or these Q&As, and everyone can join in and talk about their film. And so it's I don't know, I think we've been able to kind of pull it off this year somehow, but
yeah, it seems like it. Like I got the email from Hannah that you guys got an extension, like you guys extended the program this year.
Yeah,
which is awesome. Congratulations. Like that's due, like a big part of that is due to your guys' work. So that's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, we're extending it through Wednesday, I believe, and just gives people more time. There's just so much content. Hannah programmed so many shorts this year, and we've got so many good docs and so many good narratives and all this stuff's all over the world. And so, yeah, it just gives everyone more of a chance to check it out, which is really cool.
And what's the name of your film again, so I can go watch it after this Q&A?
Oh, it's Kill Estate. It's kind
Kill
of a
Estate?
horror film.
All
Just a heads
right.
up.
Well, I will be watching it for sure. I'm so
It's
glad you mentioned
starring,
it.
yeah, the lead character is my lovely wife, Cassandra. She is the real estate agent. So enjoy her wacky performance because it was
What
wonderful working
inspired
with her.
casting.
I know, right? We're a small group. We're all in all the same things because we love to work with each other. So why not?
That's awesome. Yeah.
Well, you've been so wonderful. I want to just hang out and chat with you all day, but I don't want to take up your whole day. Thank you so much for being here. This has been awesome.
Ryan, it was my absolute pleasure. It was so
Yeah.
great to talk with you. Thank you again.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining us. Once again, make sure you're voting for those audience award winners. Cast a vote for Pregame. Cast a vote for all the other amazing shorts and features you see this year. And thank you so much, Dana. Let's talk soon, okay?
Sounds good. Cheers, Ryan. Have a good rest of your day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.